They thought we were done, but they never saw what we buried in the dark. The words rattled through Cole Mercer's mind as he stared at the cracked viewport of the derelict station beyond the scorched glass, the last embers of Earth's once proud colonies flickered like dying candles. It had been 20 years since the Vorr Dominion's ships had blackened the skies, searing forests to glass and oceans to steam, pushing humanity's scattered remnants into hidden vaults and drifting graveyards like this. Cole had been a child on Titan Station when the Vorr arrived. He remembered the silence, the kind that settles in the bones when everyone knows they are prey. Now, 35, hardened, hollow-eyed, he drifted among the skeletons of orbital rings, scavenging fuel and rumors for what was left of humankind. They called him Ghost Mercer on the encrypted channels, a man who survived the Dominion's purges when others turned to dust. He was no legend, just a stubborn fool too angry to die. The station around him groaned as he moved down its throat of rusted corridors. His battered exhaust's light flickered over murals of the old world, painted by children who once dreamed of stars that would love them back. He touched the cracked wall, feeling the story they left behind: families, explorers, poets, all ash now, drifting through silent black. In the command dome, Cole flicked open an ancient terminal. His fingers danced over keys corroded by decades of neglect, coaxing the machine awake, a ghost speaking to another ghost. Come on, he hissed. Static hissed back, then a flicker, a buried file, an encrypted distress ping. Human code, but old, so old it made his chest tighten. Project Eidolon, a name he hadn't heard since he was a boy, half asleep on his father's lap as news feeds whispered of secret weapons Earth's high command swore didn't exist. Cole's breath misted inside his helmet. He leaned closer, heartbeat like a drum against his ribs. The Dominion had swept every battlefield clean, hunted every last resistance cell, but they never found Eidolon. He reached for the file, a trembling spark of hope flickering in the ruins of his resolve. Outside, the Vorr patrol ships drifted past the broken station like sharks around a dying whale. Cole knew they were scanning for signs of life, any spark of defiance to crush before it could breathe. He pressed the download command. The terminal's old speakers crackled. Then a voice echoed through the dome's dead air, as soft, as sharp as a blade in the dark. Eidolon online, awaiting final key. Cole froze. In that moment, the past felt close enough to touch. The ghosts of Earth weren't gone. They'd been waiting. A distant boom shuddered through the stations. Bones, a Vorr boarding craft, docking claws raking metal like the scratching of a waking beast. Cole sealed his helmet, his pulse pounding. His gloved hand hovered over the keypad. Outside, the Dominion called for reinforcements. Confident humanity had nothing left to give. Inside, Cole Mercer whispered to the terminal, a prayer for the broken. Let's show them what the dark remembers. Asterisk, the Vorr boarding craft bit into the station's outer ring like a parasite. Cole felt the vibrations under his boots, sharp metal fingers piercing ancient hull plating, sealing the exit he'd used to drift in unseen. He glanced at the terminal, its single word pulsing like a heartbeat, awaiting. Cole slid his pulse carbine from the magnet clamp on his shoulder. The weapon was old, battered, held together by field welds and hope. Just like him, he flicked the safety off and crept down the corridor, every step echoing in the station's brittle silence. Through the cracked viewport, he caught sight of the Vorr soldiers disembarking, tall, insectal silhouettes in gleaming black Carapace armor, their heads haloed by scanning filaments that twitched for heat, motion, the scent of human sweat. Vorr infantry were bred for suppression, not mercy. Their shriek guns dissolved flesh to slurry. Before it hit the floor, Cole ducked into an access shaft as the first Vorr troopers swept the corridor, their boots clanging like iron drums. He held his breath as their searchlights pierced the gloom. For a heartbeat, he saw his reflection in one trooper's visor, a pale ghost of a man, eyes burning with something feral. When the patrol passed, Cole slipped back out, moving toward the data core. He needed to finish what he started, unlock Eidolon, get the coordinates, disappear into the drift before the Vorr could pin him down. He thought of Titan Station, of his father's voice whispering bedtime myths about Earth's final weapons, nightmares wrapped in secrets, buried before the Vorr ever came, weapons no one ever proved real. Cole's father had died screaming into a dead channel, calling for Eidolon to wake up. Now, to decades too late, Cole answered. He dropped into the command center again. The terminal's hum was a beacon. He knelt, Tapped in his father's old clearance code, the one code the Vorr never found when they cracked Titan's defense net. A hiss. The terminal flickered. Static crawled over the screen, then formed a sigil, a coiled serpent around. A star, Earth's mark for operations too dangerous to wear a flag. Eidolon. Final authorization required. Outside, a shriek ripped through the hole. Vorr had found his trail. Cole's pulse carbine hummed as he braced it against the command desk. He tapped with one hand, sights aimed at the corridor. A memory rose, unbidden. His mother's voice, soft through the bulkhead walls of Titan, telling him to remember who he was when the sky turned black. He spoke the last words into the mic. Mercer, Cole, Titan Station, Guardian Protocol. The terminal swallowed the words. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then a single line scrawled across the screen. Coordinates confirmed. Eidolon awaits. Cole felt something loosen in his chest. A knot bound up for 20 years. Then the first for trooper rounded the corridor. Cole squeezed the trigger. The pulse carbine spat blue fire. The Vorr's chest erupted in steaming shards of chitin and synthetic flesh. The second trooper lunged forward, shriek gun wailing. Cole ducked behind the terminal as a beam of burning violet chewed through the bulkhead. Sparks showered him like falling stars. He fired blind around the corner. Another fell, convulsing. The third came at him with a blade of fused plasma. Cole slammed his rifle up, deflecting the strike, feeling the heat sear through his sleeve. He roared, drove his elbow into the Vorr's throat, felt the alien shudder and collapse. More boots, more shadows. Vorr didn't send 3. They sent squads, waves, until the body heat drowned every corridor in blood. Cole snatched the portable drive from the terminal, slipped it into the pouch at his belt. He could hear his breath rasping, feel his heart hammering so loud it drowned out the distant screams of metal. He bolted for the maintenance shaft, leaping over the bodies, boots slipping in ichor. As he climbed, a pulse round whined past his head, vaporizing a rung. He fell the last 2 meters, hit the deck, rolled. The bulkhead door loomed ahead. Beyond it, the emergency pod bay. Cole slammed his palm on the override. The door stuttered, whined, half sealed by age and corrosion. He jammed his shoulder against it, pushed until his muscles screamed. A Vorr shriek echoed behind him. He didn't look back. He forced the door wide enough, squeezed through, his suit scraping rust flakes as he dropped into the pod cradle. The tiny escape craft was older than he was, a spherical tin can bolted to dead dreams. But its reactor hummed when he slammed his palm on the ignition. Through the porthole, he saw a soldier swarm the corridor. One spotted him, raised its shriek gun. Cole flipped the launch switch. The escape pod fired like a bullet through the docking claw's hole. Metal shrieked, air whooshed, body sucked into vacuum. He felt the jolt in his spine as the stars swallowed him. He drifted now, a lone man in a tin shell, cradling the drive that held Earth's final secret. His breath ragged, sweat freezing on his brow. Behind him, the Vorr station flickered like a dying ember. Ahead, in the darkness, Eidolon waited. But Cole knew one truth. The Vorr wouldn't let him vanish. They'd seen him run. They'd seen him bleed. They'd call for backup, fleets upon fleets. They had no idea what Earth would send in return. Cole's escape pod spun through the cold void like a kicked can. Inside, he sat strapped to the cracked seat, one hand clamped on the manual thruster lever, the other clutching the small drive like a relic of a religion no one prayed to anymore. The Vorr fleet would have seen the launch, their sensor web stretched for millions of kilometers. No rock, no ship, no heartbeat passed unseen. Somewhere out there, a command node would be barking orders in its chittering dialect, dispatching interceptors to sweep the drifting relic that was Cole Mercer. But they were too late to stop what was already in motion. The nav system flickered to life, fighting the lock on the coordinates. The same sigil, serpent and star, glowed faint green in the pod's frostbitten cabin. Eidolon. Rendezvous locked. Cole's throat felt dry. His mind replayed the myths whispered by old resistance cells, hidden bunkers beneath polar ice caps, ghost fleets drifting in asteroid belts, entire war factories sealed behind false moons. Stories for broken soldiers to cling to when Vorr boots crushed their last cities. But Eidolon had always been different. Eidolon wasn't a bunker, or a ship, or a cache of half-frozen weapons. It was something worse, or something better, depending on whether you wanted to see the Vorr burn. A proximity alarm shrieked. Cole jolted. Outside, shapes cut across the starlight. Vorr interceptors, all black holes and plasma stingers. They curved toward him like knives. Cole punched the thrusters. The pod shuddered, rattling him like dice in a tin cup. He wasn't armed, not really. The pod had a single retro cannon welded under its belly, a leftover from when these tin cans ferried diplomats between peaceful colonies. But Cole wasn't a diplomat. He thumbed the cannon's manual trigger. A burst of kinetic rounds spat into the void. Wild, erratic, but enough to force the lead Vorr to break formation. One passed so close he saw its pilot, a featureless helm, mandibles flexing behind the canopy glass, scanning his tiny craft like a butcher eyeing a fly. Cole barked a dry laugh. Come and get it, you armored roaches. He kicked the pod into a spin, slingshotting between the interceptors. A plasma bolt grazed his starboard hull, molten metal dripping like tears. Warning lights exploded on his dash. He fought to keep his breath steady. He could feel the drive's warmth in his pocket, like it was alive, pulsing, hungry. A sudden burst on the comms, a voice, scrambled. Human, Ghost Mercer, say again, confirm. Cole's eyes widened. That voice was impossible. A human frequency, hidden under layers of old-world encryption, a voice calling from the grave. He flipped open the battered comm switch. Who is this? Identify. The reply came through static, sharp as a blade. This is Captain Idris Harlan. You've got Edal on. We've got your eyes. Hold course. Worry bound. Harlan. Cole's mind stumbled. The name was a ghost story. The last captain of the Lunar Vanguard, presumed dead when the Vorr glassed the moon's hidden yards. Another plasma bolt slammed the pod, jolting him back to the moment. The interceptor swooped for the kill, then the void split. From the dark drifted shapes, angular shadows that didn't match any Vorr design. Cold gray holes with old Terran sigils. Hull plating blackened by decades hidden in asteroid shadows. Edalon's teeth. Railguns flared, cutting arcs of molten light. Vorr interceptors scattered like insects in a storm of iron and magnetics. One craft sheared in half, venting green ichor and shimmering debris. Cole's comm crackled again. Cole, stay on vector. The ghost fleet's awake. You're not alone anymore. He let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. The Vorr ships regrouped, forming a loose phalanx, but they hesitated. For the first time in a generation, they were facing human guns they hadn't melted down or enslaved. Cole's battered pod locked into the tractor beam of a waiting stealth frigate. Through the cracked viewport, he glimpsed its hull, HFS Retribution. He whispered the name, a relic from the Lunar Wars, vanished before Cole was born. The docking bay swallowed him whole. Inside, old lights flickered awake as armored figures pulled open the hatch, dragged him out before his legs remembered how to move. He stood in the belly of the beast, human engineers in patchwork suits. Old vet soldiers with scars older than Cole, all marked with the serpent star on their shoulder plates. At the front, a man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, eyes like flint under a gray buzzcut. Idris Harlan himself, the ghost captain, flesh and blood. Harlan gripped Cole's shoulder. His voice rumbled through the clang of engines spooling. Up for war. You've done well, Mercer. You brought back the spark. Cole held out the drive. Tell me Edalon's not just a myth. Harlan took it, his grip iron. It's no myth. It's the reckoning, and now the Vorr will see what Earth buried in the dark. Behind them, the Retribution's cannons growled. The Vorr fleet regrouped. In the distance, fanning out like carrion birds sensing defiance for the first time in decades. Cole felt it then, the old fear twisting into something sharper, heavier. Hope. The Dominion had called for backup. Earth was finally ready to answer. The Retribution surged through the dark like a predator uncoiling after the long in hibernation. Inside its armored heart, Cole Mercer stood on the command deck, bracing against the vibrations of ancient engines pushed far past their limits. The cold metal under his boots felt alive, like the ship itself remembered how to hunt. Harlan leaned over the tactical display, his weathered face illuminated by flickering blue light. The ghost fleet, Edalon's secret inheritance, was on the move. Dozens of stealth frigates and gunships, old Lunar War dreadnoughts cannibalized from dead yards, and hidden deep in the asteroid fields while the Vorr Dominion proclaimed, the last humans extinct. Now, those ships cut silent paths toward the Dominion's forward garrison. 1,000 were ships strong, bristling with plasma turrets and drones bred for orbital sieges. An armada that had grown complacent circling broken human worlds like vultures around rotting meat. Harlan turned to Cole. Voice calm, but coiled with something electric. How bad did they see you? Cole shifted his weight, feeling the ache of fresh bruises under his suit. They'll know. The Vorr will have traced the ping to this sector by now. They'll come heavy. Harlan grunted. Good. Let them. They think we're shadows. We'll show them fire. Around them, the deck bustled with life. Not the polished ranks of Earth's old navies, but ragged ghosts, ex-miners pulling cables. Young techs wiring fresh reactors into railgun batteries that hadn't fired in 20 years. A girl barely older than Cole had been when the Vorr came worked beside a one-eyed veteran. With a shattered cybernetic arm, they shared no flag now, but one mark on their shoulders, the Serpent Star. Harlan gestured for Cole to follow him through a side hatch into the briefing room. The door sealed with a hiss that felt more like the exhale of an old god waking. The room was cramped, walls plastered with star charts, flickering with data pulses over fleet positions. In the center, a battered holodeck displayed the Vorr garrison, a tight cluster of fortress ships, fuel depots, and orbital launch yards like barnacles on a dark reef. Harlan slammed the Eidolon drive into the table's slot. The hologram flickered, then split apart, layers of classified schematics blooming like ghost flowers. Cole sucked in a breath as he recognized the shapes, buried shipyards in the Orc cloud, hidden orbital silos, ancient kinetic batteries that could hurl rods of tungsten at a planet's surface with enough force to crack continents. Eidolon was never just one weapon, Harlan said, voice low, reverent. It was a promise. If the Vorr came, we'd disappear, but our teeth would remain. Waiting for someone stubborn enough to find the key, Cole looked him in the eye. So this is it. We're launching an antique graveyard at a fleet that's been fattening itself on us for 20 years? Harlan actually smiled, a hard, thin line that did not touch his eyes. Not antiques, Mercer, relics, hungry ones, and the Vorr forgot how to be afraid. Cole felt a flicker of something deeper than hope, rage, sharpened to purpose. He thought of the station's murals, the dreams of children who never got to touch starlight. A sudden alarm shrieked through the ship, a deck officer's voice, cutting over the intercom, multiple for contacts inbound, interceptors and heavies. They're forming a perimeter. Harlan's eyes flared. They're sealing us in. Good. We'll break the ring and hit them where it hurts. He pointed to the holodeck, at the Vorr's primary supply ship tethered to the fortress yard. That's our artery. Cut it. The garrison bleeds. For command node won't expect an offensive. They think they're hunting stragglers. Cole frowned. You want to run a frontal strike with a ghost fleet. Harlan locked eyes with him. We're not ghosts anymore. We're human. We hit first. We hit hardest, and we don't stop. A rumble shuddered under their boots. The retribution pivoting for battle. Outside, through the armored viewports, streaks of Vorr interceptors laced the black with plasma trails. Harlan clapped Cole's shoulder once, like a father might before sending the son into a storm. Arm up. You'll lead the boarding team. That supply ship is our keyhole. We blow it. We open the rest. Cole felt his pulse hammer. 20 years of hiding, running, scraping by. Now he would step on over steel, gun in hand, a walking curse made flesh. He strapped on his battered exosuit, checked the pulse rifle's charge, then slipped the old resistance patch, Serpent Star, onto his chest plate. He could feel the eyes of the crew on him as he moved down the corridor to the drop bay. Some nodded. Some saluted. None asked if he was ready. They were all beyond ready. They'd spent too long in the dark, waiting for permission to be monsters again. For the right reasons, as the drop pod sailed around Cole and the boarding crew. The Vorr fleet's plasma fire splashed across the retribution shields, casting brief hellish shadows through the VIEWPORTS dot over the comms. Harlan's voice thundered like an oath. For Earth. For the broken, for the buried. The clamps released. The pods fired into the void, tiny meteors streaking for the Vorr's iron heart. Cole braced against the G-force, teeth bared, eyes burning. The Dominion wanted a final purge. They were about to choke on the ashes of what they thought they'd killed. The drop pod slammed into the Vorr supply ship's outer hull with a bone-jarring crunch. Sparks flew through the cabin as mag clamps bit deep, anchoring Cole Mercer and his strike team to the belly of the Dominion's lifeline. For one heartbeat, the only sound was the hiss of venting atmosphere and the steady drum of Cole's pulse in his ears. Then the breach charge detonated. A blossom of white flame split the pod's hatch. Air roared into vacuum as Cole surged forward, pulse rifle leveled. boots magnetized to the fresh, wound torn in the Vorr's steel hide. He landed in a corridor of alien alloy, green bioluminescence flickering across cotton-lined walls, conduits, pulsing like veins. The air smelled of ammonia and burning insulation. His squad fanned out behind him, 6 humans clad in battered exosuits, faces hidden behind mirrored visors. They moved like a single organism, lethal, silent, unstoppable, through the link in his helmet. Cole heard Captain Harlan's voice, calm as the void. Mercer, status. Cole swept the corridor, pulse rifle barking twice, to Vorr deck. Sentries fell, shriek guns clattering on the chitin floor. Breach secure. We're moving for the core. He didn't wait for Harlan's reply. The supply ship shuddered beneath his boots. The Vorr fleet outside had realized what was happening. Distant explosions rippled through the hull as the Retribution and his ghost fleet engaged the perimeter ring in a brutal dance of plasma, railgun slugs, and old vengeance. Cole's team pressed on, through twisted corridors and bone-laced chambers where Vorr engineers shrieked in alarm before falling to human steel. Every door forced, every junction cleared. They were carving a wound in the Dominion's belly, drop by drop. Cole paused at an intersection, hand pressed against a wall that seemed to breathe under his palm. He could feel it, the ship's pulse. This was no simple cargo hauler. It was alive in ways only the Vorr understood. They grew their war machines like hives, fed them colonies, built them from bone and iron and stolen human steel. He turned to Mylavos, the youngest of his team, her visor scuffed, eyes glinting with lethal focus. Cores to decks down. We breached the reactor, blow the spine, then we're ghosts again. Myla checked her mag charges, voice steady despite the tremor in the deck under their boots. Copy. Vorr won't get a chance to repair it. Cole forced a grin. That's the spirit. They descended through a service shaft, boots clanging, against alien rungs slick with frost. Below, Vorr drones clustered like insects in a nest. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Cole could see their outlines through the shaft's slotted panels, heads twitching, weapons like coiled serpents ready to spit death. He flicked on the squad comm, charges ready. A chorus of clicks answered, old Earth tech, scavenged detonators, crude by Dominion standards, but they didn't care. They were here to bleed the Vorr, not outlive them. Cole counted down, voice low. 3, 2, 1. The hatch below blew inward. Flashbangs bounced into the chamber, searing white, light and sonic thunder swallowing the Vorr shrieks. Cole dropped through the hole, boots hammering the deck. His rifle barked in brutal bursts, armor-piercing rounds smashing through insectal carapace and synthetic flesh. The team followed, clearing targets with surgical violence. The chamber reeked of burnt chitin and ozone. Vorr bodies twitched in pools of iridescent blood. At the far end, the reactor's biocore pulsed, a knot of grown plasma coils wrapped in bone and metal, humming with enough power to feed half the Dominion fleet. Cole sprinted forward, slapping charges onto the main conduits. Myla covered him, pulse rounds hissing over his shoulder. A Vorr lieutenant, massive, armored in dark exoskeletal plating, barreled through the haze, shriek blade swinging wide. Cole rolled, felt the blade's heat sear across his back plate. He came up inside the Vorr's guard, jammed his pulse, rifle under its chin, and fired until the alien shrieks went silent. He stood over the smoking corpse, chest heaving, ears ringing with the thunder of his own heart. The detonators clicked green on his HUD. 5 minutes. Enough time to vanish, or enough time to die well. He keyed the comm. Charges set. Spines broken. Once this blows, for can't resupply. Harlan's voice came through static. The battle raging outside, drowning every word in thunder. Good work, Mercer. Get out. Jump ship to the Retribution. This is our turning point. For fleets scattering. They're not ready for a human wolf pack. Cole grinned, feral and wild. Copy that. See you in the drift. His team fell back up the shaft, moving fast. The supply ship convulsed under their boots. The Vorr fleet's plasma batteries hammering the hull as the Dominion realized they were losing their throat. As they reached the breach point, Cole glanced back one last time at the reactor core. In its pulsing glow, he saw a reflection of Earth, broken, hidden, but burning with something no Vorr Dominion could cage. The Vorr had called for backup. Earth had answered with ghosts, with iron, with monsters they buried in the dark, and Cole Mercer, born under the Dominion's boot, had just driven the first nail into the Vorr's black heart. The supply ship's spine cracked behind him, fire searing through grown alloy and bone. The retribution loomed beyond, drop claws ready to snatch them from the drift. Cole dove into the black, feeling the shockwave kiss his armor as the Vorr's lifeline tore itself apart. This was no final stand. This was the first blow of something the Vorr had forgotten how to fear, a human war. The blast wave from the Vorr supply ship's ruptured spine echoed through the void like a silent roar. Shattered plating, scorched bone fragments, and broken Vorr drones spun away into the black, drifting graves for an empire that thought itself unassailable. Cole Mercer tumbled through the debris field, exhausted with thrusters sputtering as he fought for orientation. The Retribution's docking claws finally caught him, magnetic locks clamping around his armor with a wrenching tug that nearly dislocated his shoulder. A moment later, Mila Voss and the rest of his strike team slammed into the airlock beside him, panting, alive for now. Inside the Retribution, alarms shrieked like furious ghosts. The deck vibrated with the deep percussion of railguns firing. In relentless volleys, the Vorr garrison, thousands strong, had regrouped in a loose ring, shock giving way to cold calculation. What they lost in the supply ship, they replaced with raw force, for command didn't negotiate. It smothered. Cole tore off his helmet, breath fogging in the cold air. Captain Harlan stood on the command deck's raised dais, surrounded by a circle of roughneck officers, some with raw cybernetics, others wearing old Earth Fleet insignia blacked out to nothing but scratches. Harlan's eyes flicked to Cole, then back to the main holodeck, a roiling hologram of the battlefield. The Vorr ships tightened their perimeter, hundreds of interceptors swarming like hornets, larger carriers drifting into artillery position. Cole forced down the acid in his throat. We hit their artery, but they're not bleeding fast enough. Harlan's jaw twitched, the only sign of tension Cole had ever seen in the man. They're adapting. For doctrine, cut one vein, they grow another. We have to cauterize the whole wound. Mila pushed her way to Cole's side, voice ragged through her visor's calm. We still have Eidolon's coordinates for the silos, don't we? Harlan didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on the Vorr formation, the serpent star insignia on his collar, catching the glow of the holodeck's shifting light. We do, but once we trigger those rods, there's no going back. They're not meant for a surgical strike. They're meant for the kind of message the Vorr thought we'd forgotten how to send. Silence settled over the bridge, the hush of people standing at the edge of a cliff they'd sworn never to look down again. Cole stepped forward, voice low but clear. So let's send it. He felt every eye on him, the old ghosts, the kids with homemade weapons, the engineers who'd soldered broken reactors back to life with scavenged wire. None of them flinched. Harlan keyed the command codes on the holodeck. The display shifted, ancient orbital silos hidden behind false asteroid signatures, camouflaged by layers of defunct mining operations, kinetic rods, tungsten and depleted uranium, sealed since before the Vorr's first ships blackened Earth's sky. Project Godfall. Harlan said, almost reverently, one push, one burn. We dropped them from high drift. Let physics finish the sermon. Cole watched the simulation, rods falling from high orbit. No plasma. No fancy warheads, just the oldest trick humankind ever invented, gravity, sharpened to a spear. What's left of the Vorr garrison? Cole asked, an officer to Harlan's. Left, a woman with half her face replaced by pale alloy plating, answered, her voice iron. They're moving to encircle us. If they break through the retribution screen, we're dead before the rods hit. Harlan's eyes snapped. Two Coles. You up for one more dance, Mercer? Cole almost laughed. It sounded foreign in his chest, raw and cracked. Always. What's the plan? Harlan leaned in, voice low enough only Cole could hear. We opened a corridor for the rods. Someone has to hold the line. Bait the Vorr's point fleets into position, keep them clustered. Cole knew what that meant. It wasn't a suicide run, but it would look enough like one to the Vorr that they'd swarm it, desperate to crush the last spark. Harlan's hand clasped his shoulder, not like a commander this time, but like a brother in arms at the world's end. Take the Argus. She's a ghost frigate. Fast, ugly, mean. Get in their face. Make them think you're all we have. Left. Cole could feel the deck's low rumble vibrating in his bones. Railguns, missile silos. The heartbeat of old Earth rage still thundering despite the Dominion's best efforts. He nodded once. How long until the rods hit? Harlan's eyes narrowed. 8 minutes from launch. You buy us 8. Cole turned to Mila, her eyes wide behind her cracked visor. She didn't ask to come. She didn't need to. She was already by his side. They moved fast. Down the corridor, through the gantries where the Argus waited. An old stealth frigate painted in scorched matte plating, hull pockmarked from asteroid collisions and near-miss plasma strikes. Its railguns were exposed, raw, no shielding, no polish, just hunger. Cole strapped into the command cradle, Mila at the weapons console. The bridge was cramped, wires snaking like veins around their seats. Through the forward viewport, the Vorr fleet's kill circle closed in, plasma streaks like forked lightning. Interceptors swirling like predators that had finally smelled real prey. Cole's fingers danced over the controls. The Argus lurched forward, engine screaming a song that hadn't been sung in decades. Over the comms, Harlan's voice crackled one last time. "See you on the other side, Ghost Mercer." Cole grinned. Feral and free, or not. Either way, they'll remember us. The Vorr called for backup. Earth was about to teach them the cost of asking. The Argus tore through the void like a blade drawn from the oldest scabbard Earth ever forged. Her engines howled in defiance, shedding scraps of armored plating and carbon scoring as she broke past the first wall of Vorr. Interceptors, inside. The cramped bridge, Cole Mercer's hands moved like a gunslinger's, flipping manual thrusters, overriding safeties that had slept for 20 years. Beside him, Mila Voss locked targeting solutions as the Vorr swarm drew tighter. Plasma, trails crossing the black like the veins of a dying star. The Vorr did exactly what they always did. They swarmed. The kill circle snapped shut around the Argus. Thousands of shriek drones and living artillery ships locking onto the single human frigate, taunting their fortress. They didn't know the rods were falling. They didn't know Earth's ghosts were counting seconds. Not ships. They only saw prey. Cole slammed the comms open. The Retribution's channel crackled with static and shouted orders. He could hear Harlan's voice in the roar, calm and unyielding. "Status?" Cole barked laughter over the feed, laughter edged with something. That tasted like blood and freedom. "The Vorr are all here. We're dancing with the whole nest." Mila's fingers flew over the weapons console. The Argus railguns spat a furious staccato, slugs ripping holes through Vorr armor, scattering burning Carapace into the drift. But for every Vorr ship that shattered, 3 more pressed in. A shriek blast clipped their starboard wing. Sparks exploded across the bridge, showering Cole's visor with hot shards. He tasted copper as he bit his tongue, grinning through the pain. For minutes, Mila yelled over the alarm klaxons. "They're still to loose. We need them." Tighter. Cole slammed the maneuver thrusters, sending the Argus into a dead spin. The entire crew slammed against harnesses as the old frigate pivoted on her dying engines, plunging straight into the heart of the Vorr swarm. Outside the viewport, the Vorr ships loomed like a living wall, bioengineered plating flexing as they fired shriek beams that carved the void into molten veins. Cole threaded the Argus between them, close enough that his sensors squealed with collision warnings. "Come on," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Come on, you bastards. Close the net." One Vorr destroyer drifted into range, larger than the rest, a command node pulsing with hostile AI. Its plasma lances spat emerald light, lashing the Argus hull in a storm that cracked plating and sent air whizzing through fresh wounds. Mila locked the railguns on the command node, voice cold as steel, firing. Twin rail slugs punched through the destroyer's command cortex. A burst of white fire blossomed in the black as the Vorr ship shuddered and split apart. But the swarm didn't scatter. They collapsed inward instead, furious, unified, hungry for the kill. Cole saw it happen, the Vorr's perfect pattern tightening, drawing closer, overlapping kill vectors so they could finish the Argus with one final strike. They thought this was the last defiant spark. They didn't see the storm above them. Through the cracked canopy, Cole glimpsed distant specks trailing burning lines through the void. The rods, tungsten and uranium, falling like divine judgment. His lips split in a grin that hurt. 1 minute, Mila. 1 damn minute. A Vorr boarding spike smashed into the Argus midsection. Alarms shrieked as atmosphere vented. Cole yanked his sidearm, turned as the hatch behind him buckled under cloud fists and plasma cutters. 4 drones forced their way in, insectal frames, black carapace gleaming with biolight. Mila pivoted in her chair, sidearm barking in her glove fist. 1 drone shrieked as its helm exploded. Another lunged at Cole. He sidestepped, jammed his sidearm under its plated jaw, and fired until green ichor sprayed the bulkhead. The Argus lurched under another blast. Cole slammed back into his seat, hands flying over the controls. Fire spewed from the aft thrusters. Hull breach alarms howled like wolves in a dying forest. 30 seconds, Mila shouted, reloading. Her voice cracked, but her eyes burned like sunrise behind her visor. Cole locked eyes with her. No words left to say. They'd both known it might end here. It had to end here, because that was how humans fought. Not with clean victories, but with sacrifices that carved legends into the bones of the galaxy. He jammed the thrusters one last time, forcing the Argus directly under the densest cluster of her ships. The swarm's plasma fire hammered them from every angle. Panels blew apart. Flames licked the edges of the bridge as systems failed one by one. Cole closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He thought of Titan Station, of his father's voice, of the murals on the old walls, the dreams of children who wanted the stars to love them back. When he opened his eyes, he saw the rods hit. Silent streaks of tungsten slammed into the Vorr, fleet like thunder given shape. One by one, colossal impact shocks ripped through the swarm. Ships buckled inward, folded under their own weight. Hulls torn apart by kinetic force that no shield could stop. Shockwaves rippled out, smashing drones, shattering carriers. On the bridge of the Argus, Cole and Mila watched the sky burn. The Vorr's pride, fleets bred for conquest, armored to enslave, ripped apart like paper under a storm of ancient human physics. A low laugh rattled in Cole's throat, half a sob, half a growl. That's it, he breathed. That's what they forgot. Beside him, Mila whispered through cracked lips. They called for backup. Cole finished it for her. Voice raw and ragged over the thunder tearing the Vorr apart, and Earth answered. The Argus drifted into the firestorm sheet. Summoned. Cole didn't fight the pull anymore. His eyes locked on the dying swarm outside, on the final testament that humankind could not, would not, ever be caged. As the Argus lights flickered, Cole's last thought was not of the Vorr, but of the silence that would follow, and the voice that would carry through it. Remember us. Silence. After the thunder of the rods, the shriek of plasma storms, the scream of broken hulls, there was silence. In the drifting graveyard of the Vorr fleet, the Retribution held position among the wreckage like an ancient shark gliding. Through a sea of carcasses, her battered hull still bled atmosphere in ghostly trails, her railguns cooling along scorched turrets. But she lived, and that was more than the Vorr could say. In the command deck, under flickering lights and the hum of failing life support, Captain Idris Harlan stood staring at the holodeck. The swarm was gone. What remained of the Vorr fleet drifted in chunks of molten alloy and shredded bone. Escape pods floated dead. Command nodes sparked fitfully, refusing to acknowledge defeat even as they tumbled lifeless into the abyss. Harlan's jaw worked as he took it all in. Decades of whispered plans. Generations of exiles hiding in the cold. One final blow from the grave. He looked down at the side panel, a single red dot still pulsing, the Argus transponder. He pressed the comms key. Static answered him, then a weak, broken signal stitched together by the Retribution's desperate comm array. Mila Voss's voice came through, hoarse, broken by oxygen starvation and fried circuits. Argus dead in the drift. Cole's gone. I'm still here. Life support at 12%. Harlan closed his eyes. The weight in his chest was heavier than any gravity well. He could see Cole Mercer's crooked grin, the spark in his eyes when he'd boarded the Vorr supply ship. The same look all ghosts wore when they decided they'd rather burn than bow. He keyed the deck comms, his voice carrying across the battered bridge. Find her. Bring her home. A dozen young officers, faces lit by emergency lights and flickering consoles, moved without hesitation. They were exhausted, some half-bandaged from hull breaches and fires. But they obeyed. They all knew what it meant. No human was ever left in the black. Not now. Not again. As the recovery team suited up, Harlan stood alone by the viewport. Beyond the armored glass, the remnants of the Vorr command fleet drifted into the endless dark. Where once they'd formed walls around human worlds, they now hung in ruin, silent witnesses to an ancient truth the galaxy had forgotten. When humans had nothing left to lose, they were unstoppable. Somewhere behind him, an engineer read off damage reports. Another confirmed the rods had scattered the Vorr's forward supply lines for light years. In whispers, they spoke of what came next for reinforcements, reprisal fleets, the Dominion's iron boot returning in force. But under those whispers lived something stronger. The quiet certainty that the Vorr would never again see Earth as prey. They'd see it as the wound that never closed, the ghost that never died. Hours passed. Wreckage drifted, and then, at the far edge of the viewport, a small shape broke the black, a battered shuttle. its lights flickering weakly, Mila's lifeline. Docking clamps caught the shuttle in gentle arms. The bridge fell silent as the hatch hissed open. Mila stepped through in a battered suit, helmet under her arm, hair plastered to her forehead with sweat and blood. She looked half dead, but her eyes shone like starlight, fierce and unwilling to dim. Harlan met her halfway. She tried to stand straight, but swayed under the weight of it all. He caught her before she fell. "Where's Mercer?" he asked, voice softer than his iron countenance had ever allowed before. Mila's eyes flicked to the viewport, to the drifting void where the Argus had vanished in flame. Her voice was barely more than breath. He held them, long enough. He knew it was enough. Harlan's hand tightened on her shoulder. No more words. None were needed. They carried Mila to the medbay. Around them, the ship hummed with the quiet energy of people beginning to hope, not because the fight was over, but because the fight had changed. The Vorr would return. They always did, but now they knew. Now they had a name to fear again, not just Eidolon, not just Old Earth. Ghosts. They had Cole Mercer, Mila Voss, the Serpent Star, and all the stubborn blood behind it. In the hours that followed, scattered human outposts that had hidden for decades lit coded beacons into the void. Old resistance cells listening on Forbidden. Bands picked up the chatter. The Vorr swarm shattered, the rods falling from heaven. The Dominions were fleet burning like dead suns, and they answered across orbital ruins, in buried bunkers beneath radioactive sands, under frozen oceans. On exomoon colonies, humans lifted their heads and whispered the same word, enough. They would rise now, not as scattered embers, but as a storm the Vorr could never smother. On the Retribution's bridge, Harlan stood at the viewport long after the alarms fell silent, watching the drift of wreckage like a graveyard of giants. Behind him, engineers spoke of repairs, pilots planned new strikes. The Serpent Star would spread again, not hidden in shadows, but carved into every human hull that defied the Dominion. Harlan allowed himself one final thought for the boy who had started it, the kid from Titan's last ruin, who'd stolen Eidolon's spark and flung it back into the stars. He whispered it to the black between worlds, to the broken ships and drifting Vorr wrecks. We were broken, but we were never beaten, and somewhere in that drifting silence, it felt like the stars listened.